It's a pleasure to present my talk on environmental stories and Chernobyl memory in Ukrainian children's literature to such a diverse audience. I'm truly delighted to see that there is so much interest in the topic of Chernobyl. I'm also pleased to mention that I had the opportunity to present a similar lecture at Global Childhood Ecologist in 2023 at the invitation of Sarah Welt. Since then, however, my focus on this topic has deepened significantly. My first article, Reading the Chernobyl Catastrophe with an Eco-Fiction, published in 2022 in Children's Literature in Education, became a starting point for further articles and book chapters, some of which you can see here on the slide. In my works, I explore several directions within environmental discourse. The first direction examines nature-oriented Ukrainian children's literature, where nature takes on different roles from anthropocentric to ecocentric. The second looks at environmental pollution, especially Chernobyl. As you can see on the slide, I'm going to divide this talk into two parts and to consider about 10 Ukrainian books for children and young adults through a critical approach and memory studies. In the first part, Chernobyl catastrophe, past and present within cultural memory, let's start by discussing its background and the different forms of cultural memory surrounding the accident. Then, in the second part, the Chernobyl disaster as an interaction of humans, non-humans, techno in children's books. I will consider Ukrainian children's and young adults literature across different genres. However, before we begin, I'd like to ask all of you what comes to mind when you think about Chernobyl. Please share your suggestions in the chat. All your suggestions, images, colors, beds, names, different collocations, books, whatever comes into your mind. And please keep your suggestions short, just the words or collocations, not complete sentences. And yeah, I please, Mateusz.
Yes, I'm here.
Please look at the chat, maybe some buttons.
Yes. I will.
Okay.
So far, no connotations. We have many participants. Okay, so self-settlers. That's the first thing that has been posted. Give us more.
Something else?
If you don't have access to chat, just use your mics. What are your connotations with Chernobyl? Because probably not everyone has access to chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Sami Kumani from Mauritius. I would say human loss.
Oh, human loss. Human loss. So we have something more in the chat. My childhood drinking special liquid to avoid bad consequences of Chernobyl. Another one, grainy TV images. So we have human loss, self-settlers, childhood memories, TV images. Anything else?
I'm sorry, I don't have access to the chat, but the first impression, it is the victimization of the disaster and the commercialization of the commodification of the disaster.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I think we will move to the next slides. I'm sure your suggestions are very good and very interesting. And I can see that we have an interested and knowledgeable audience. So I hope this lecture will be useful for all you. So first of all, let me give you a brief background. Can you see me? Can you hear?
Yes.
For an informed audience on the Chernobyl accident, which is called the worst civilian nuclear incident in the world. As we already know, the great catastrophe occurred in 1986 near Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, and is considered the largest in the entire history of nuclear energy. The current war in Ukraine raises concerns about new nuclear threat, as there are 5 nuclear power plants in the country. Although the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in northern Ukraine is non-functional, the radiation levels are still very high. Moreover, Europe's largest nuclear plant, the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant in the southern Ukraine, has been threatened with a new nuclear catastrophe and radiation contamination since the Russian military invasion. Thus, Chernobyl appears as a large-scale human-made disaster affecting both humans and non-humans, which has gained cultural and symbolic meanings. At the same time, these meanings are part of the cultural memory of Ukrainians. According to Astrid L., cultural forms and media such as literature, film, photography, museums, and memorials are the ways in which public memory is produced and circulated on local, national, and global levels. As part of the current memory of Ukrainians, this memory is represented officially through the annual commemoration of Chernobyl disaster Remembrance Day on April 26. In addition, Chernobyl, both as a town and as a nuclear power plant, has become a tourist site. In the Chernobyl zone, a reserve was created called the Chernobyl Radiation and Ecological Biosphere Reserve. In addition, since 2021, the National Bank of Ukraine has issued a series of commemorative coins called Chernobyl Revival. These coins, you can see all of them on the slide. These coins depict animals that have become symbol of how nature is recovering in the Chernobyl biosphere reserve. For example, Przewalski horse, brown bear, Eurasian lynx, blackstock, and European elk. But of course, the Chernobyl topic is widely known internationally through the Stalker series, a collection of shooter survival horror games by the Ukrainian studio GSC Game World. Officially, 4 main games have been released. The games are set in the Chernobyl exclusion zone after a fictional second nuclear explosion. They portray a post-apocalyptic world filled with radiation, anomalous energy, and dangerous creatures. This image with its radiation, mutation, and stalkers resonates in children's and young adult literature, especially in novels, which I will discuss later. But Chernobyl's cultural memory is also represented through the works of Maria Primachenko, a Ukrainian naive artist who lived in the 30-kilometer Chernobyl zone. She created a series of paintings addressing the Chernobyl disaster. For example, some of them you can see on the slide. This May nuclear war be cast and flowers grown near the fourth block. Before Chernobyl, Primachenko's works were more realistic, but afterwards they became fantastical with bright colors. The fantastical animals and other imagery appear in the contemporary Chernobyl-themed picture book for children, presenting Primachenko's story and paintings, which we will discuss later. Besides films for adults, there is a children's animation called Travel Book Ukraine Ghost Town, also Travel Book Ukraine Pripyat. It tells the story of Pripyat through the eyes of teddy bear left behind by a boy who fled because of radiation contamination. I suggest you watch this animation. It lasts around 3 minutes. If we have this opportunity
I have posted it to our Teams channel, to our chat. I'm sorry, to our chat. So those of you who can access the chat, you can just click the link. Or Maryna, maybe you can try sharing the video.
Maybe I can try sharing this video.
Just in case, I have also posted the link. So
can you see?
Yes.
Okay. Can you hear?
No, but we can. Okay, but we can see it and we can see the subtitles. So.
No.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know that you couldn't hear the sounds, right?
Yes, probably.
But this animation in Ukrainian, but I guess you could understand the story through the visual imagery because it's like a picture book and with English subtitles. And you can then, I think, look again, and we continue with our presentation. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as we could see, the film's developers use retrospection, showing the events of 1986 with color, coding green and yellow for life and nature, black, grey and red for death and danger. The burning reactor and fallen helicopter illustrates the hidden tragedy, while the teddy bear also points to the future and responsibility toward nature. You can see the quote, on the slide. We have nothing to be proud of, but we have something to remember. Our planet is a single, a very vulnerable organism. The animation ends optimistically. Nature recovers and animals and plants return to the abundant land. This idea connecting past, present and future and showing the interaction of humans, non-humans and the environment is also found in contemporary Ukrainian children's books about Chernobyl, which we will explore next in the novels, short stories, comics and picture books. So let's move on the next section, the Chernobyl disaster as an interaction between humans, non-humans and techno in children's books. Chernobyl is not only a historical event, but also a symbolic catastrophe on many levels. It involves technical errors, human heroism, social consequences, environmental mutation, and even spiritual reflections. Ukrainian children's books about Chernobyl were published in different periods. Some appeared right after the catastrophe, while others were written in the 21st century, mostly I would say. These books not only tell stories about Chernobyl, but also show the theme has changed over time. The earliest books reflect the official perspective on the disaster. Later works combine new imagery like woodwork with traditional symbols from folklore, literature and religious texts. As eco-fiction, these books warn about the negative impact of human activity on nature and encourage young readers to remember tragedies and respect family, culture, nature and animals. So we can divide these books into three main groups. First, Chernobyl books published right after the accident during the socialist realist period. They were ideological, engaged and emotional. The second group is the Chernobyl prose from the early 1990s after Ukrainian regained independence, exploring human and environmental consequences, blending human and non-human stories, and presenting the tragedy through Ukrainian culture and decolonized history. And contemporary Chernobyl eco-fiction for children and young adults. Ecocentric works in different genres, from short stories, picture books, and eco-comics to fantastical novels. So let's now look at this writing in more detail. Following the overview of the three main groups of Chernobyl-themed children's literature, we can now turn to the very first literary responses to the catastrophe, which appeared immediately after the accident and shaped the early Chernobyl genre in Ukrainian literature. There are numerous Chernobyl-themed works that are well known to Ukrainian readers but may be less familiar to Western audience due to limited translations. Among them are epic poems such as Boris Solivnik's Seven and Ivan Drach's well-known epic poem Chornobylska Madonna, Chernobyl Madonna, which still continue to be studied in Ukrainian schools. Written immediately after the accident, these early works combine documentary detail, emotional engagement, and philosophical reflection, portraying tragical visions of the future, heroism of responders, despair of affected residents, while also reflecting the Soviet perspective of the disaster. This perhaps most clearly illustrated in the only documentary novel for children and young adults at the same time. You can see it on the left part of the slide. It's The Bitter Grass by Diane. It was published in 1918 in the former Soviet Ukraine. From the book cover on the left of the slide, you can get an idea of its content and focus. So the novel is based on the available documentary data on the Chernobyl accident and honors human heroic efforts against technological and atomic threats. In this way, was showing everyday heroism in Chernobyl. It also reflects ideological and Soviet influences, while likely contributed to the novel not gaining the same recognition as Ivan Drach's Chornobylska Madonna. This early engagement with Chernobyl in literature is also personal for me. When I was a school student in the early 1990s, I wrote my graduation essay for Ukrainian literature on Chornobylska Madonna by Ivan Drach. So you see, I'm a very experienced person in this topic. So building on this early literary engagement with Chernobyl, we can see how the catastrophe was later represented in short stories for young readers. So the first notable collection is Yevgen Gusela's Children of Chernobyl, which helped establish the genre of realistic short stories for young readers. Following this, Viktor Vasilchuk's short stories, The Wanderings of the Chernobyl Dog Bucha, and Sasha Kochubey's Mistress of the Forest, offer later interpretation of the Chernobyl theme. Writing almost a decade after the disaster, in 1995, Gusela captured the traumatic experiences of both humans and the environment. In 2012, Vasilchuk centers his story on a dog, exploring its survival, mutation, and death in the Chernobyl zone, a realism made possible by the declassification of Soviet archives. Kochubey, in turn, several years after, in 2016, reflects on Chernobyl, approaching it through memory and emphasizing humans as part of nature. This ecocentric perspective continues to appear in contemporary Ukrainian children's and young adult literature. So let's move and explore these books in more detail. Hutsela's collection Children of Chernobyl was published in 1995, almost a decade after the Chernobyl accident, during a period of re-evaluation of the Soviet legacy and decolonizing Ukrainian literature, history, and culture. The collection contains 7 short stories that explore the effects of the disaster on Ukrainian society, portraying nature as a metaphor for the mother and expressing a deep sense of responsibility for the homeland and its people. Rural landscapes are shown in Hutsela's typically idyllic style with fields, forests, lakes, and cultural symbols like kalina or vaibenem and rushnik or embroidered towel. The Chernobyl disaster disrupts this world, bringing disease, injuries, and death. Themes include preserving harmony between humans and nature and maintaining spiritual balance through love of the homeland and knowledge of its history and tradition. For example, in the story Crying in the Dark of the Night, young Olena reflects, you can see this quote on the slide, "I do not want to give birth to a mutant. From mutants come mutants, a nation of mutants. The nation are mutant," showing how mutants symbolize the environmental and cultural trauma of 20th century Ukraine. In another short story, Chernobyl girl Kalina, radiation's impact on human health is explored through a girl from Chernobyl who suffers from leukemia, cancer. Using the folk image of Kalina by Benem, Hutsela draws parallels between nature and human suffering, leaving readers to reflect on the fate of both the girl and the environment. The collection ends with Christmas story, in which Katrin, an orphan, celebrates Christmas with her grandfather in the forest through traditional customs like caroling with a star, practices that were also suppressed during the Soviet times, just like the Chernobyl tragedy. Hutsela connects the rebirth of nature to the revival of Ukrainian cultural traditions, showing how children can reconnect with their heritage. Revealing a previously hidden side of the tragedy, Vasilchuk, in his realistic short story, The Wanderings of the Chernobyl Dog Bucha, focuses on abandoned animals in the Chernobyl zone. After the disaster, only people were evacuated while pets and livestock were left behind. Recently opened Soviet archives confirm both the killing of animals and the later admission of this mistake. You can see this quote on the slide. The story is told from the perspective of the dog butcher who witnesses the accident, the evacuation, waiting for humans, the shooting of animals, exposure to radiation, mutation, and death. Vasilchuk not only shows the cruelty of these events, but also describes how nature begins to recover without people, for instance, in, for example, May. Returning to the Chernobyl zone not as a place of danger, but as a lost home, Sasha Kochubey offers a different perspective in her Mistress of the Forest. Mistress of the Forest was published in 2016 in the Reader for Children, recommended by the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. Kochubey focuses on eco-memory and the survival of both humans and non-humans. The key idea is expressed in the words, "Your roots are where you were born." The main character, the great-grandmother, returns from Kiev to her native village, Zalyssia, in Chernobyl zone. Although the author emphasizes that people cannot live there safely, she constantly shows how human and non-human histories remain connected. The great-grandmother repeats, "I was born in the village Zalyssia, behind a forest, and I will die there. And Zalyssia, behind a forest, is my house and roots." Here, Zalyssia, in Ukrainian, za lisom, it's not only a real village. It also means behind a forest, linking the place directly to the environment. Through the child's perspective, the great-grandmother is compared to a periwinkle growing near the house, and her neighbors are the animals of the forest, such as bear, fox, wolf, moose, and horses. In this way, Kochubey presents Chernobyl not through destruction, but through belonging, memory, and coexistence between humans and nature. While Kochubey focuses on the return of people to their homes in the Chernobyl zone, in other novels, Chernobyl itself becomes the main setting. In this work, the role of technology and radiation is very strong. The novels published in 2019 illustrate this. For example, Anatoly Andrzejewski, Chernobyl dog Axel, and Antin Mukharsky, Apocalyptic, the skeleton from Chernobyl. On the one hand, Chernobyl is depicted as a place of radiation, mutants, and stalkers, which in some imagery even recalls the video game Stalker. As you can see on the slide, the covers of both books show animals and human skeletons meeting radiation. In addition, these novels feature both real and unusual animals, plants, and humans. On the other hand, their plots are complex, modeling two worlds, real and imaginary, raising questions about environmental contamination, survival, and even war. Often, it's the unusual creature that become the protagonist of these stories. So let's give you some examples. In Chernobyl, dog Axel, the main protagonist, the dog Axel, a descendant of animals that survived the Chernobyl accident, tells the story of events in the exclusion zone. He can change the color of his fur due to radiation. Axel exists on the boundary between reality and fantasy. In the story, he guides Miroslav, a boy visiting the Chernobyl zone with his parents, showing both the past and present perspectives of the disaster. The cover with Axel image is just one illustration because he, like other animals, moves between these worlds, real and imaginary, acting as a mediator between humans and nature. On the slide, you can see how the story contrasts the human and non-human worlds after the accident. If people did not feel the radiation after the explosion, then nature felt it immediately. For comparison, look at the slide, human world. The city of Pripyat greeted Saturday morning calmly and comfortably. Schools were open, children played in the playground, shops and cafes were opened as usual, houses, windows were opened wide, and a natural world. However, living beings in the surrounding forest held their spirits in fear. There was a dead, scary silence. The birds stopped singing. The animals were lacking. Small insects frozen in the grass. Plants were afraid to even draw water from the ground, drink cold dew, open their leaves, or unfold their cursed flowers. Imaginary characters in the novel reflects both the negative impact of humans on nature and the restoration of nature in the Chernobyl zone. For example, Mr. Pokoch, whose name literally in Ukrainian means mutant, obtained by crossing different species, symbolizes the first consequences of the accident. Melton, also another character, is depicted a half deer, half bird. Mr. Buskoluk, a mutant, recounts the explosion to Miroslav, showing the struggles of Chernobyl animals. Through Axel, dog Axel, the novel communicates a powerful idea. You also can see it on the slide. We are Chernobyl animals, and Chernobyl dogs hold this space on our shoulders. We also got into trouble and fell here to die. But we survived, and we remained mediators in the radiation space. This emphasizes the survival of nature despite human attempts to dominate it. Continuing with Chernobyl as a setting, Antin Bukharsky's apocalyptic novel, The Skeleton from Chernobyl, also takes place in the exclusion zone. The story features not only mutant animals and plants, but also children. At the same time, it reflects on tragic pages of Ukrainian history, both Chernobyl and the current war. The novel's imagery, including mutants, stalker, reactor sites, and dosimeters, is perhaps too closest to what a foreign audience might imagine when thinking of Chernobyl, as it was influenced by popular culture such as the stalker game. However, the novel has two interwoven storylines, one apocalyptic, one realistic, connecting humans, nature, and techno. The first follows Konstantin, who becomes the mythical skeleton and lives among mutants created by Chornobyl. The second follows Mikhais, a boy who lost his father in the war, as he comes to the zone and discovers both the ruins of the Soviet legacy and the surprisingly restored natural world. The author presents these events mythically: the great explosion for nuclear disaster, the great execution for the mass killing of animals, and great unity to commemorate all victims, humans and non-humans. Through this, the novel links the destruction caused by the Soviet regime and the current war to the survival and memory of both humans and nature in Chernobyl. Turning from novels to a different form of storytelling, contemporary Ukrainian picture books and non-fiction approach to the Chernobyl disaster in ways that combine visual and verbal communication, reflecting on the Soviet legacy and human responsibility towards the environment. This perspective is exemplified in Katerina Michalitsina's picture book, The Flower Beside the Four Reactor, as well as in the non-fiction work by Katerina Michalitsina and Stanislav Dvornitsky, Reactors Do Not Explode, A Brief History of the Chernobyl Disaster. The Chernobyl theme in these books is presented on two levels, the visual and the verbal. This dual approach allows readers to engage with the disaster in an immediate and emotional resonance way, making it one of the most effective methods of exploring the topic. At the same time, these works encourage reflection on broader issues of human responsibility toward nature, extending the conversation beyond the historical event itself. So in the picture book, The Flower Beside the Fourth Reactor, we follow two storylines. The first tells the story of Stasia, a young girl, and her Ukrainian family across 4 generations of the Chernobyl disaster. The second presents the famous, naive artist Maria Primachenko, whom I mentioned at the beginning. As we can see from the book, the main character, Stasia, imitates Primachenko's painting style. In this way, the picture book emphasizes the connection between generations and illustrates how memory, family, and nature preservation are expressed both visually and verbally. The story unfolds through Stasia's storyline and her great-grandmother, who had to leave the Chernobyl zone after the disaster. She recalls the catastrophe, its environmental consequences, and the evacuation that left both people and pets behind. The picture book used vibrant illustrations of the village life and Ukrainian houses with embroidered towels, contrasting with black and white depictions of the city and the nuclear explosion. The horror of the disaster is emphasized through dark tones and reflection in gas mask. You can see this picture on the slide. The story ends on a hopeful note. The final illustration shows Stasia with her great-grandmother family memories, flowers, and rural landscapes, emphasizing that the tragedy of Chernobyl is part of the nation memory, preserved through family stories. The last spread depicts the restored natural world, full of plants and animals, but without humans, who have destroyed their own environment. Following the narrative and visual approach of the picture book, the non-fiction book, Reactors Do Not Explode, also used verbal and visual strategies to convey the Chernobyl accident on multiple levels, such as technological, emotional, natural, or environmental, and political. According to the authors, Chernobyl is not just a event by which Ukraine is recognized, but a conscious historical experience. Here, as Chernobyl is the city, nuclear station, exclusion zone, as well as strategy and symbol. As a postmodern non-fictional picture book, it contains a graphic and text hybrid that can be read and reread on different levels. First, the visual level is achieved through double spread illustration, collages, maps of the area of the exclusion zone, the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and the movement of the radioactive cloud after the explosion, as well as images of technical processes of the reactors. Such images give the effect of visual layering and windows to different times. Then the verbal level unfolds as 2 stories from the reactor construction to the consequences of the explosion and back to today. In other words, the text talks about the Chernobyl events in 1986 and what preceded them, and then about the modern problems. The comprehensively reveal the Chernobyl tragedy. The book refers to research, eyewitness memories, archival materials, and videos on YouTube. Finally, the book includes a bookmark with educational support. You can see it on the slide. In the bookmark, the author addressed the children and young adults. The Chernobyl topic is not simple. In this book, you will find perhaps the most complete story of Chernobyl events, their causes and consequences, research and explanation. In this respect, writers raise the issues about responsibilities, the value of human and non-human life, living home, the right to know, and environmental destruction. Building on these visual and verbal strategies, we saw in Reactors Do Not Explore, recent comics continue to explore Chernobyl, but now the stories also respond to the war in Ukraine. The invasion became a trigger for a new works in Ukrainian comics, including Chernobyl Oasis by Bogdan Krasavtsev, and comics about the environmental consequences of the war in Ukraine. In Chernobyl Oasis, the main character is a deer who tells the story showing the contrast between humans and nature. Through this perspective, the author highlights that animals find paradise and freedom only after humans leave, but at the cost of radiation. As you can see on the slide, quote, for animals, this place is paradise because they are not threatened by human activity. Humans appear only as tourists, observing nature but no longer harming it. Interestingly, the comics is drawn in black and white, only black and white. The title Chernobyl Oasis suggests a dangerous mirage, an illusory paradise. It's a kind of warning for the next generation. Similarly, comics about the environmental consequences of the war in Ukraine, produced by the Environmental Project, tell the story of brother Yurko and his sister Miroslava as they flee the war. The comics is made of mini episodes that show ongoing ecocide, damaged soils, forests, nature reserves, waters and landscapes. It also raises awareness of risks from nuclear plants and mining that threaten both humans and the natural world. Both works take the Chernobyl theme to a global level, showing the danger to all living beings, humans and non-human alike. Okay, I seem to have run out of time, and we can sum up of what we discussed today. First, Ukrainian Chernobyl literature has been developing since the explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and Chernobyl is still presented in various genres: short stories, eco-comics, novels, picture books, and non-fiction. Second, nature and non-humans occupy an important position in the Ukrainian children's literature on Chernobyl issues, and this literature consists of nature-oriented texts. So, Chernobyl children's fiction is a part of the cultural memory of Ukrainians, in which the leading theme is a warning against future nuclear disaster. This talk is based on different references. If you would like to find out more on this issue, you can refer to some sources which I share with you on the slide. And now, if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this fantastic talk. I think that we have all learned a lot about Chernobyl in the context of Ukrainian literature and Ukrainian children's literature. And I'm pretty sure that there are many questions. I mean, that you all have many questions, and I'm sure that in a second you will ask them. So if you want to ask a question, you can write it down in the chat, or you can just raise your digital hand, and then we'll ask you to. We'll ask you to ask your question.
Yes, Chernobyl is a little bit complicated topic.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, it's very complicated.
A lot of
but we have our first
technical
questions.
terms.
Yes, we have our first question. Ina, please go ahead.
Yes, just thank you for presenting the outcomes of your research project, and special thanks for presenting the fresh fictional writings by the Ukrainian writers. Yes, I have some questions, and the first one is related to the role of. Just in your opinion, how do these fictional writings, which are under your study, integrate Chernobyl memory into environmental storytelling without overwhelming young readers with traumatic experience? I mean, how do these writers balance that delicate task of introducing Chernobyl memory without just within environmental stories, without causing undue distress to children? And what is the role of adult assistants, I mean teachers, parents, adult assistants, in avoiding traumatic experience after close reading these fictional works? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for these questions. Books are different. So, and different strategies the authors use and present. I think the best way is when we can combine these visual and verbal levels, like Katerina Michalitsina in his book about cultural memory. Moment, I need to remember the title of this book. Also a good book, Mistress of the Forest, because it was included in the Reader for Children. The first
Flowers near the Forest.
Yeah. And the next one, it's oh my gosh. Picture books, The Flowers Beside the Fourth Reactor. And this book also was included in the school curriculum, but only like model program. So the teachers can use which different programs, I mean, how they want different programs. So the books have different strategies, and I think in different groups of children. Some books were written for kids or children, other for young adults. For example, for me, the most difficult book was about dog Bucha. It's very realistic books and very difficult for reading for me. I'm not sure that people are so depressed because Ukrainians experienced more difficult situations and conflicts because of the war in Ukraine. So I think all of them are okay, and you really say right that teachers and educators can just use different strategies implemented to these books into their classes. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Ina?
Yes, I guess also just maybe they appeal to the hope, resilience narratives in order to just make the traumatic experience after close reading more just more smooth. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Maryna, for your fantastic answer to this very difficult question. I think that it's fascinating that in the newer books there's this great focus on animals and on nature, because somehow it's I think that it's a global phenomenon. So empathy building is easier when non-human animals are used in these books. Somehow non-human animals tend to resonate with young people, with children. And it's also like it's an interesting strategy when you think about it, also when it comes to protecting the child, sparing the child. I have many thoughts. So it's just like it's just
it's a good point. I see what you mean. It's very important. I think in this way, Ukrainian children's literature on Chernobyl theme is a part of this global children's literature, because of this perspective, using this perspective on this interaction between humans and non-humans. So not only about tragedy, but also about how humans can solve this situation with pollution. Not only pollution, by the way, but only how to save this planet. So yes, I agree that it's a global level, not only local or only discussing our problem, local problem, not only this, but global level. So
Yes, and we have some questions in the chat. So let me read the two questions from Anya Kubelovska. Are children able to take action in texts discussing Chernobyl, or are they only observers dealing with the consequences of adults' decisions? Are children burdened with the responsibility of fixing the world after the disaster in these narratives in any way, or is it purely a reflection and commemoration?
All my vocabulary in the one in one question.
So what is the role of children in these books? Do children have to fix the world, or do children have to fix the adults' mistakes? Do children symbolize, I don't know, the future, or are they just observants? Are they just
I understand. It's a good question and good perspective for the future reflection. Yes, children, of course, are part and the main character of these books. I think first generation, like a great grandmother or parents, mostly it's great grandmothers. They save this memory and then transfer these children. So this is idea of memory idea. So the first one. But children, what symbolize, they should keep this idea for future safe in this environment, to protect this nature. This and this, because it's not only these books, environmental stories. I mean, there are many eco books in Ukrainian children's literature regarding this topic, environment. So it's like one step for eco literacy, I think. So not only memory about the past events, but like literacy, eco.
Thank you so much for this insightful observation. And I think that's why Ukrainian books about the Chernobyl catastrophe are so much better than Anglophone books about the Chernobyl catastrophe, which I have read, because most of the Anglophone books about the topic are just terrible, they're terrible because in these books, Chernobyl is positioned as this kind of alien, let's say, event, if you know what I mean. It's not like part of the world. It's not realistic. It's just this out of this world, let's say, catastrophe, and the characters are so exaggerated. It's like, so most of, at least the books that I have read, and then I haven't read all of them, but at least the ones that I have read are highly problematic for various different reasons. And these Ukrainian ones are just so nuanced and so subtle. Even those discussing difficult topics, difficult relationships, between children and animals, between adults and children. So thank you for also just for highlighting Ukrainian children's literature and the Ukrainian voices, because many people in here, I assume, are familiar with Anglophone TV shows and games, video games, because Chernobyl is a part of global culture. Yes, it's part of global culture. Yeah, it's not a strictly. It is a part of Ukrainian cultural memory, but it's also part of the global cultural memory. But in the global cultural memory, I think, and Chernobyl plays the role of this distant catastrophe that is just, it's like something so detached from, most people's reality. But in this context, it's something that is tangible. It's real. It's connected to a real place and real people, and there are people who remember this catastrophe, who lived through it, and that's I think a major difference.
Yes, it's a good observation, because from my perspective, these books which I presented today, they have such as emotional perspective, cultural perspective, sensitive. So I would recommend read these books. Maybe in the future they will translate into English, and
hopefully
would lost this emotional aspect, all cultural elements. But for me, they sound very warm and sensitive. So I like them.
Thank you. So we have time for one more question, maybe. So if there are more questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. Yes, hello? We do have a question. Hello.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Yeah, please.
Yes. So my question is to the professor and everybody participating. The question that the first person who asked the question is around that theme of, when we talk about such catastrophic events for children, be it wars and environmental crises. So how do we, what are the techniques by the children's authors? How do we present these themes, such difficult and traumatic themes, to the children? Do we really tell them how it is? Or there are ways of, making it little light and little accessible, and then also thinking that maybe they're not ready because they are young and they might not be able to understand the effect and to understand it completely. So do we tell them straight, or do we have other techniques of putting it just so that they understand, and that's it?
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Yes, there are many techniques, strategies to implement this terrible event like Chernobyl. But the most interesting, I think, is pictures, of course. Though the interesting pictures, then all books have such as optimistic and so they optimistically have some perspective. So not so tragic. Even if we are talking about such a difficult apocalyptic book like book Anton Mukharsky, The Skeleton, even this topic and in both worlds, realistic and fantasy world, both stories have an optimistic decisions. So I think this is the second strategy. So it's like a linking and connection this memory or this story like advice for a new generation. So pictures, optimistical final, and maybe some moral topics, I think, and because children can discuss this topic. And for example, contemporary books like nonfiction, Reactor do not explore. This strategy also very interesting because the authors used different beautiful pictures. And also this app, you can use this app and explain all these difficult terms. So in this way, children can be involved in these difficult stories. So you need to be prepared for all this, for this difficult life, adult life. So, because Ukrainian children live in this difficult life because of the war. So, what is Chernobyl? So, the life is difficult. So, our children are prepared.